Good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephanie Chase from BiblioCommons, and we're back for day 2 of our Reader's Advisory trainings with Nancy Pearl. So thank you to everybody who joined us yesterday for the 3 sessions. The recordings of those that have been shortened so you can use them are all available linked on the event pages. And today we're doing 3 more, and the first one that we're starting with is talking about tagging for the 4 doorways. And so everybody was given a little bit of assignment that was put on the event page, so if you saw that, that's great. We're going to be tagging your 5 favorite books today, so that if you, or the 5 books that you picked yesterday, when we asked you to pick 5 books that describe you as a reader. So if you were not part of the sessions yesterday, it's a good time now to kind of put on your thinking hat and start thinking about which 5 books or you might want to have in the pool there. So just to get started, I'm going to start by introducing Nancy Pearl, who's here today.
Happy you're all with us. Looking forward to it.
And then, again, just to remind everybody, we're going to spend about 10 minutes talking about tagging for the 4 doorways, about 5 minutes in an activity, and then we'll have a question and answer period. And so if you are watching us streaming, there's a little box in your Hangout. It says Q&A. It's like a little turquoise box. If you click on that, it will open the Q&A on the side, and you can ask us questions. So if you are not, if you have something that you want to know, just kind of put it right in there. But we also have several librarians joining us down here at the bottom today, and I'm just going to have them all quickly introduce themselves so you can see who's kind of in the audience here in the Hangout with us in case you see our faces pop up later. So let's start with Maxine, who's my colleague at BiblioCommons.
Hi, everyone.
And we'll do all the Canadians first. So Melanie.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and I work at Stratford Public Library in Canada, and I'm a public service librarian there.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
How about Jenny?
Hi, my name's Jenny. I work at the Surrey Public Library, City Centre Library in BC, Canada.
And then it's Annika?
Annika, yeah.
Annika. I said it wrong yesterday, too. So sorry.
Hi, I'm Annika, and I also work at Surrey Libraries with Jenny. But I work at the Guildford branch now, and I work with teens.
And then next we'll head down to Greg.
Hey everyone, my name is Greg Windsor. I work as a Reader's Advisory Librarian at Johnson County, Kansas, right outside of Kansas City. And sad to say, I am not a Canadian.
Too bad for you, Greg.
And Sarah, I know we can, I hope you can hear us, and we can't see you.
Yes,
but
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Yep.
Perfect. I am Sarah Ward. I work at the Whatcom County Library District, and I'm the manager of 2 branches there.
So thank you to everybody who joined us yesterday. I can hear somebody has us playing in the back. Shortened, so you can who's in the Hangout. Linked on the. Okay, better. Thank you. And so I'm going to hand it over to Nancy. So just one thing before she gets started. On the page for this, we linked to Nancy's TED Talk that she did here in Seattle about the 4 doorways. So for those of you who are new to the concept, it's about 20 minutes, right, Nancy?
Yes.
And so that's a wonderful overview for people who are brand new to the 4 doorways, because we're just going to cover it very briefly today. So Nancy, tell us about the 4 doorways.
Okay, so you can think about doorways as the major appeals of a particular book, fiction or narrative nonfiction. Basically, what I've come to see or what I've come to understand, and what I'd like to offer you is a different way of thinking about books and putting books together, is this notion of doorways. And I think that every book of fiction and narrative nonfiction is composed of 4 elements: character, story, character, setting, and language. And when people come up and say they want, could you recommend another good book to them, and you say, well, tell me about a book that you like, what they're going to talk about is what it was that drew them into a particular book. And they're going to do this in a variety of ways. If it was the story that drew them into it, probably what they're going to talk about is how they couldn't put the book down, how exciting it was, how scary it was. They're going to talk about an experience that they've had reading the book. If it's a character-driven book, such as an Ann Tyler novel, they're going to talk about how much the characters meant to them, how they seemed to really get to know the characters, followed their lives throughout, or whatever period of life of their lives we're reading about through the book. With setting, you often hear somebody will say, especially in reviews, they'll say, oh, the setting was like another character. And it's when you're talking about a book in which setting is the major appeal, or the major doorway, you're talking about books that absolutely depend on the world building of the author, so that one of the most interesting things about setting for me, and I do not read for setting, that's not one of my big doorways, but one of the interesting things about setting for me is that it links together two parts of the fiction collection that we don't normally think about being connected, and that is historical fiction and fantasy and science fiction. I think by playing with that idea, you really get you really can widen and deepen our patrons' experience with the world of books and literature, which is what I think is one of our major goals in this life, that broadening and deepening of a reader's experience. When a book has language as one of its two major doorways, what people are going to say when they talk about it, they're going to talk about how, for example, it didn't matter what the book was about, it was how it was told. Or they're going to say, oh, when I was reading this book, I just had to underline, particular passages in the book, and then you always want to say, I hope it wasn't a library book that you were underlining. And to make that easier for myself, I have a notebook of passages that I've copied down over the years. So,
luckily in BiblioCommons, you could just add those as a quote.
Yes, right. And I mean, there's one of the added benefit. I mean, that's why I'm such a fan of technology, because it does make those things possible. When people want here's why I think tagging for the four doorways is so important. When people want another book just like the book that they've recently read and loved, they're not talking about plot. They're not talking about what the book is about. They're talking about their experience of the book. And what they want in their next good book is to replicate that experience. So, I think it would be, do we have examples of the pie charts here?
Yeah, we do. Let me bring them up.
Okay. So one of my great dreams is that we add a visual component to all of our catalog entries, and I would just love it if BiblioCommons would start doing this. And it doesn't have to be a pie chart, but some way to demonstrate what the major doorways are for every book. So, and you could do it as a bar graph. I just started with my students asking them to do pie charts. So what you see, and
there we go.
Okay, so what you see is here's a book with story as the largest doorway. And Michael Crichton's Prey is a good example. You could do any of the Michael Crichton books. Coma has just been reissued in the United States as a trade paper. That's pretty exciting, because there's a whole generation of people who haven't read Coma. And for a young adult book, a teen novel, a book in which story is definitely the major doorway, is really anything by Anthony Horowitz. And you can compare what I think we need to do, and this has a lot of bearing on all the other things we're going to talk about this afternoon in all three sessions. What I think we want to do is compare doorways, the size of doorways, because if a book has a big doorway as the Glass Castle, the major doorway in that is clearly character. Story would be the secondary doorway. What that means is that people who read for story and people who read for character have a good chance of enjoying that book. Of course, we can't predict whether, with any real accuracy, whether someone's going to love a book or not. But if you read for character or you read for story, then you have a good chance of loving that book. Compare that to The Hours by Michael Cunningham, Pulitzer Prize winner, National Book Award winner. That has a big character doorway too. So for people who love The Glass Castle, because they love the main character and how she changed and grew and her sort of relationship to the world, The Hours would be a reasonable suggestion to give to them. But the difference is The Hours has a small doorway component, a story doorway, and a very large language doorway, so that you can move then from The Hours to other books in which language is a big, big doorway. And those would be authors, for example, like Donna Tartt or Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So what I think, thinking about books in terms of these doorways rather than in terms of what they're about, I think that allows us again to do what Neil Wyatt calls a whole collection reader's advisory, because each one of these doorways, we've just talked about fiction, but each one of these doorways has a nonfiction component as well. I find this really exciting to think about. When you initially start thinking about it, you think, oh, everybody is going to look at a book and analyze it, do a pie chart or a bar graph differently. But what I think you'll find happens is that people will, across the board, will identify the two biggest doorways, which is what you're really looking for. Those will be very similar. That is, they will both be the two biggest ones in that pie chart, or the two tallest ones in a bar graph. So I find this is the kind of thing I think about when I can't fall asleep at night, and I think about, what a benefit it would be to readers to just immediately see this bar graph. And since we don't have that yet, the way, of course, to achieve that is to tag character-driven novel, or just, I guess that's the stage we're at now, character-driven novel, story-driven novel, language. But, a language-driven novel, you always have to make clear that we're not talking about bad language or anything.
Well, and I think you pointed out, Nancy, that with technology, we really have the ability to put that kind of language in. When you and I were talking about this, we talked about how, often this kind of information that we need that would be very, very helpful to readers, or that readers are looking for, is not present in the MARC record. So that if we search for it in a traditional setting, we often cannot come across these kinds of things. We're relying on our own information and our own knowledge.
Totally.
But we can go in and check, in a tag, say character-driven or great characters, or any of those kinds of things that then we can search on. And in fact, Greg and I do a monthly piece for the partner portal where we read a book together and put lots of user-generated content in the catalog about it. And we read a mystery that I had picked 2 months ago, and then a mystery he had picked this last month, and it was a wonderful exercise to see how the different kinds of things that we like in mysteries. And I joked I need to go and put character-driven on all of mine.
Right, and for me, the two things that I read for, and I suspect Melanie reads for these things too. Certainly, character is our big entrance into a book. That's what we want. Or I'll just speak for me, Melanie, but I want a character, not necessarily that I like, but a character that's so well developed that they feel like they're stepping out of the book into my life, and I think about them afterwards, and I wonder what where they are now in their lives, what happened to them, did that marriage last, did they have children, all of that kind of thing. I don't need characters that I like. A lot of readers need characters that they like, but in order to get to that distinction, you have to find books that have characters. in which we could describe them as character-driven. A really easy shortcut to find a character-driven novel, and I think we're all looking for something that would make life a little bit easier when we're helping our patrons, is to look for a book in which the title is the character's name, or the title is descriptive of a character, about a boy, that, for example, that kind of thing. So that's just one easy way. This is all explained much more in the TEDx talk that I did.
Well, we talked a little bit yesterday, too, about reading a book in 5 minutes or less, and that was
Right.
one of the tips that you had given yesterday, so that video is up for people, too.
Yes.
So we have a little exercise, again, for people to kind of put this into practice. And so for those of you who were here yesterday, you should have 5 books on your completed shelf that describe you as a reader. So you should have 5 books that you feel really well, that you know really well. If not, at the beginning, I just remember to ask you to think about 5 books that are favorites. So if we pick one, why don't we try to think about how we would tag it as an example. So that's our activity. So we'll have the people who are in the Hangout talk about it a little bit. And while you're listening to the people in the Hangout, why don't you, everybody at home, kind of try to do that with 5 pieces. So log into BiblioCommons, bring up the bib record of the book that you're interested in talking about, and then you could just click right on Add Tags if you're logged in, and you could do it live, and we'll all be able to take advantage of what you're putting in. So Nancy, I don't know if you want to start.